Well, welcome to the Hoporenkv Native American podcast, where we discuss focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. I'm Melissa Atkins, the Training and Development Coordinator, and with me is Brooke Warrington, the Training Development Specialist. And today, our special guest is Veronica Lane. She is a Navajo member and the Vice President and Marketing Director for the Native American Bank. Thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to share just a little bit of information today before we dive in?
Sure. Yes, I can introduce myself. I am Veronica, and as mentioned, I am with Native American Bank. I've been with the bank for about 9 years now and have had various roles within the bank. We're headquartered in Denver, Colorado, so that's where I'm based out of. I'm originally from my own community down on the Navajo reservation, a community called Tuolacay, New Mexico, where I was born and raised. So yeah, my whole family is there, and like I said, just live in Denver and primarily here to work for the bank, and really excited to be on the podcast.
So happy you could be on here with us today. So what led you to working for the Native American Bank? What was that journey like?
So it was very interesting because right after undergrad, I went right into working in corporate America. Worked with like various companies of like different sizes, primarily all within finance because I have a business degree for my undergrad. So knew that I was wanting to be in the finance field, but wasn't really sure about how to break into working in Indian country. I thought you had to have like all this experience and knowledge before you could work for something that was native related, which is not true, by the way. So um, I was here in Denver after moving to Oregon for a couple of years under undergrad, and just like randomly got a job in the same building where one day someone got off the elevator and I saw like a plaque that said Native American Bank on one of the floors in the building that I worked in. And I was like, whoa, what is that? That's so weird. And so I got to my desk and I Googled Native American Bank, and I saw that it was actually a bank here in Denver and it was in the building that I worked in. So I started following it a little bit, and it was just, I think, like happenstance. Like I decided to go back for my master's and I got a scholarship from a Native organization. And lo and behold, there was an employee who worked at Native American Bank who got a scholarship as well. So I think it was like very, I don't know, it was fate maybe. So I, stayed connected with that person who actually still works here today too. And he ended up hiring me to be on his team when he had an open position. So that was actually how I started working for Native American Bank, because when I started, it was a really, really small team. So it just happened that his employee was leaving town. And so they were looking for a new analyst, or they're like commercial underwriters pretty much. So yeah, that's a really interesting roundabout way of how I found Native American Bank and then actually started working here for the company.
Gotta love the universe. I feel like the universe works in such mysterious ways. And just like you said, it was faith. So you mentioned that when you first started there, you had a different position than what I introduced you as. So can you go ahead and tell us what your journey was like? Because I know off camera you mentioned that you wore many hats for Native American Bank.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, when I first came to the bank, my background career-wise was always being an analyst. I've been an analyst my entire like career prior to starting at the bank. And so I became an underwriter for the credit department, which just means like, so I work on primarily on the commercial lending side of the bank. So I'm not like the front facing. We don't really have a teller line here in Denver. We have more of like a cafe style of a branch. So I work on the back end side of the operations. Where like I did underwriting, so I like analyzed the loan applications that we received and like wrote up a credit memo, did that type of work, and then I transitioned over to the lending side of the team, which is more like externally facing. So we go out and we do like a lot of business development. We sit on a lot of panels talking about the bank, talking about the products and services that we provide, and did that for a number of years. And then just this year, transitioned over to heading up our marketing department, which has never really been formalized in the past. So it's really exciting to see the bank like grow and also focus on really making more efforts on advocating for the bank and just, getting our name out there, across Indian country.
Very cool. That's always really special when you can work somewhere where you watch it grow while you grow and you're doing more and just part of that purpose of the company. Speaking of that, what kinds of services and like what does Native American Bank offer to Indian country?
Yeah, so we are actually a full service bank. So we have like personal accounts that anyone across the country can open with us. We have checking, savings accounts. We also are primarily a commercial lender. So we do commercial lending nationwide, and we really focus on providing access to capital to Indian country specifically. So that's really where a lot of our knowledge and expertise lies. On the commercial side, we have loans in Alaska all the way down to Florida and like everywhere in between. So really have a national reach on the commercial lending side. Then we also do cannabis banking, which we've just started doing the last couple of years. So that's a really brand new product for us. And with that product, we also primarily serve our tribal clients who have cannabis operations, which, as you may know, is really a challenge to find banking products for the cannabis industry overall. So really wanted to help be a solution for our tribal clients in that aspect as well. So I would say those are primarily some of the products at a very high level that we offer. And yeah, the bank was really formed, and the mission of the bank was to be a Native-owned bank and a bank that was going to bank Indian country and to have, people work at the bank who are from these communities, which we have here, which is really cool and really interesting.
Oh, that's so inspirational. I love that. It's all about giving back to the community, which just sounds like that's what Native American Bank was, funded and started in the first place, was to give back to the communities. So can you tell us more about like what that journey was like for you? Just a little bit of some ups and downs within working in Native American Bank and how you personally have dealt through them?
Yeah, so actually, when I first came onto the bank, it was still trying to recover and regroup after the financial crisis in 2008. So obviously, like it was in a tough situation, but we had just hired a new CEO a few years prior to that, and he was rebuilding the management and leadership team here at the bank. And so I was part of like one of the early new employees coming into the bank. And I really think like when I look back on our history from when I first started to now, it's just been like such an amazing story and a growth for us because, as I mentioned, when I started working at the bank, we were in a high rise downtown Denver. And now we have our own property that we purchased. So we own property in just south of downtown. We have our own building. And then we also opened like a cafe branch here in Denver. So that was really cool to see. And then now, just late last year, we actually have moved into the Pacific Northwest market. So we have an office open there, and we're looking to open a branch probably north of Seattle to help service like that community in that area. So yeah, really excited to see that happening. And then just, yeah, seeing the turnaround, the complete, like flip of how the bank was struggling to like now how well we're doing financially and how much strength has been built over the last few years. It's been really exciting and really excited to see what the future holds too. And yeah, going back to our origin, I mean, as I mentioned, we were a bank created to provide banking services to Indian country, which really requires a lot of like unique knowledge and understanding like histories and how tribal governments work, tribal sovereignty. One of the primary people who was in charge of founding the bank was the late Eloise Cobell. She is from the Blackfeet Nation, which is where we originated from. We still have our full service branch there in Browning, Montana. And she really led the charge in getting the original 21 shareholders to invest into the bank when it was formed. And, just when we were moving out of our downtown offices, we had these like the section of cubicles that no one sat in, and they were just like jam-packed with boxes. So obviously we had to like start unpacking things. And when we were doing that, I actually found some of her like notepads of where she was like writing down notes about who she was talking to, who was going to invest in the bank. And I actually kept one of them just because like I wish I met her. She's like one of my heroes, and never got to meet her, but some of the people here at the bank got to meet her and work with her while she was still with us. So that's one of the things that I think is like really cool for me, is knowing that she had this vision as a Native female. She had like a business background, and then obviously all of the work that she did with the Cobell lawsuit. She was just very passionate, and we have our conference room here in the Denver office named after her. It's the Cobell conference room. So I don't know, it's just like really for me, it just gives me like nice and warm, fuzzy feelings to know that like she can see us today and be like, yeah, like I started that and this is what they're doing, and they're still out there doing the good work that needs to be done. So I think for me, like when things get a little bit challenging, I always just try to remember that and like know that we're here for a really, really special purpose.
No, that's absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that connection. And I support you keeping one of her notebooks. I think that's really special. A little piece of her, like through osmosis, if nothing else. Oh, that's awesome. I wanted to ask, so one of the things you had mentioned is that those of you who work with Native American Bank, a lot of the employees, come from those same communities that you're serving, yourself included. Are there any examples you can think of where your own heritage and background have helped you with a decision making process at work, or just kind of the way something panned out?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I can speak like to personal, experiences being from my res, and I grew up on the New Mexico side, but my biological dad is from the Arizona side of the reservation. So I feel very familiar with both sides and like how varying the cultures can be. So I think for different projects where like there's a project we financed in Window Rock for the tribe, just knowing exactly where, the project was going to be located, uh, taking a trip home and then just like jumping over really quick to see where the site is going to be developed. And then just giving firsthand information about, just what I know about tribal politics just from being from that community. I think, you're always ingrained in that when you're from these various communities, whether it's like getting information from social media or like we have our own newspaper down on the res. So I think that's really helpful a lot of the times because we're all based in Denver, like anyone who does all of the commercial lending work. So we don't have the benefit of being a bank that has like a physical location in these communities. So we have to rely on a lot of like research and knowledge and just like information sharing. So I think like a lot of that can be super helpful to different projects. At least for me, like on the reservation, we have a couple of projects in northern Arizona. So just like understanding the landscape of that area and based on my knowledge of the area, knowing different companies and like the tourist attractions, like why people would go to these businesses when they're in like a super remote area. So like explaining that to the team and having them understand sort of, okay, yeah, like this makes sense, or like these projections make sense because like we can see this, it's based on tourism. And so I think it's really like important in those situations. And on the flip side, obviously we go into communities where we've never had a customer before. So it's doing a lot of research and a lot of learning in those instances, which we're always open to do or willing to do. And I think it's one of the unique aspects of Native American Bank is if something is foreign to us or it's like a first time for us, we're not going to shy away from it just because of that, which I think some other institutions, get a little bit nervous, like working with a new tribe, learning new tribal law, tribal sovereignty. Those are really important aspects of like understanding when you're looking to engage in new relationships.
When it comes to going to communities that Native American Bank is not established or that you've noticed there's not a presence there, Is there a reason that is common of why that is, or does it vary depending on each community that you go to? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it definitely varies because I think with, let's say in California, where some of the tribes may be located more like closer to urban areas or on the outskirts of urban areas, they have, that I want, maybe, I don't know if I should say advantage, but just being closer to a highly populated area, whereas some communities, like in Browning, for example, it's really remote. We're like 20 something miles south of the Canadian border. And we're the only bank in that town, the only bank on the Blackfeet Reservation. There are other banks that have like ATMs located there, but like not a physical branch. And I think like for that community, it's we are the, we provide them the banking services that they need. And another thing that's really interesting about like banking in Indian country, and I think this is also true for rural banking, is it's a very cash-based system. So, it's and I think that's just like a historical tendency. Also built around like the lack of trust with, just governments and institutions. So, understanding that too is probably what makes us more willing to be in these communities and understand why there aren't other banks in those communities. Because if you want a bank in a location, you need to have deposits to run that bank, is essentially how banking works. So if a community is cash based and there's no organization or tribe backing their deposits being held at that bank, there's really no way for that bank to be successful in that community. So I think that's probably one of the main reasons why there's a challenge of like other banks going into really rural communities, and especially in like Indian country.
What is like your personal vision for where you'd like to see Native American Bank go, as well as like your work with them personally?
Yeah, I think what I would like to see is to us for us to be more well recognized. I feel like it's unfortunate that we still go to conferences and people are like, "Oh, I've never heard of Native American Bank," and it's like, yeah, well, we do all this great work and it's like very mission driven. We are 100% mission driven bank. I obviously we need to have profits in order to run the bank, in order to be successful and to grow, but like we are not like, we don't have sales, we're not driven based off of like a sales mentality like other banks. So that's one of the things I really, really enjoyed about the bank, because I'm just also not a good salesperson too. If someone told me no, I'd be like, okay, yeah, cool, thank you. I would have probably been a really terrible lender at some of the other big banks, but yeah, so I think for me, like with the new role especially, really want to make sure that we're proactive in a lot of the stuff that we're putting out into the public. I think for the longest time, we have done such amazing work, but we just never had that person dedicated to advocate for us internally and externally. And, we'll get into situations and they'll be like, oh, you know, we like, have you ever heard of this? And we're like, oh yeah, we are actually the first bank to ever do that thing, and or that type of financing. And it's like no one knows that because we just haven't had that focus. So I think for me personally, like that's one of the things I really want to advocate for the bank, is to get us out there more, to get us recognized. I do know for sure that has improved, but to keep improving on that would be really great. As far as the bank, I think, it'd be really cool to see so many new locations pop up across the country, because our focus for new locations is not necessarily like where there's massive urban potential, but where Indian country's needs are. So the Pacific Northwest, that was very targeted because of the concentration of tribes in Washington. And it's also going to service our Alaska customers as well, because we have about 6 shareholders who are Alaska Native corporations. And so that's going to be really an area that is going to service that community. So for us, like our expansion looks like maybe somewhere in the Southwest, because of obviously there are several tribes in the Southwest as well. Potentially California, because there are a lot of like rancherias out there as well. We have a lot of projects in California right now too, so that's really good. And then we do have some banking offered in the, I would say maybe upper Midwest. So we also try to really value our partners and like other banks that we know that are especially native owned who service their area. So we would never really impede on their service area. We would do a lot of like collaboration and a lot of work together to help uplift like other native owned banks and native CDFIs. So we're very strategic in like how we're looking to expand and move forward. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if we would ever move to the East Coast just because of how vast the landscape there is, especially with like the tribal populations. But we do have a couple of shareholders who are East Coast tribes, and obviously have loans in various areas too. So yeah, I think that'll be pretty great. Like right now we are on an asset size, we're just under 300,000, 300 million, not 300,000. That would be an extremely small bank. But so I think like growing that, if we could be like $1 billion bank, like that would be wild. And I really think like that is something that's definitely we have the potential to do that. And that would just blow blow my mind. And that would be super cool.
That would be amazing. I really love listening to the way like the growth strategy is that you can hear like the collectivist mindset and like support of communities in it, which is obviously very unlike most banks that you would find around here, that it's definitely going to be like a turf war more than anything else. So that's really incredible that you work in tandem with other native owned banks and lift one another up instead of the what is it called, the crab in a barrel mentality. I think that idea of like kind of not pulling others down instead of helping to bring everybody up. So that's really awesome. I love that you can hear that even in like the strategy and the growth plan, that mindset's there.
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we're like providing solutions to communities and not just plopping a branch, just because we think it's the best thing. So I think the other thing that kind of contributes to that is the recent success we've had too. And like I mentioned, the bank went through several years of trying to rebuild and regroup. And so now that we have the capacity and capabilities to do expansions, we're finally getting up to the point of actually, enacting those ideas and goals that we had because of our recent success. So we are very cautious as well because we obviously don't want to go back to what we worked really hard to get out of. But yeah, I really do like that too. I really like our approach, and it's been interesting to see the approach currently with the Seattle location. I say Seattle, but it's in Isoka right now. Our branch, we have just a business office at this point until we open the full service branch. But yeah, it's a learning, and once we have this down, then we'll be able to like turnkey other branches. So it's been pretty interesting and really exciting.
And I admire your motivation, because I like how you don't forget the past. Everyone has ups and downs, and you're like, yeah, it was rough for a minute, but here we are now. And it's not like, okay, we're here now, so forget it. No, you're like, nope. What do we do to never get back there again? What do we do to get better? What do we do to get 1 billion, 1 million? Like that, I truly admire that, and I admire that you truly do try to find a solution, and a human solution. You listen to the community's internal issues, and not like it's not a transaction. And I really admire that, because you're not in it for the profits, as you mentioned. You're in it for the overall mission, which is to help Indian country. So I admire you greatly for that. I say keep up the fight. I mean, you guys are incredible. Your mission shows it just about like Brooke was saying, it just radiates off of you. You love what you do, and it shows. And I love that you're bringing that to communities. Is there any advice that you would like to offer to Indian country or to anyone who's trying to work in Indian country and who would like to help?
Definitely. I would say because of the growth that we are experiencing right now, we have open positions currently. You have, 3 different markets if you're interested in working for the bank to work in. We do internship projects, so we do a lot of work to support our youth as well. So we offer scholarships and we also do paid internships. Always want to make sure that I mention it's paid. Um, and historically, those have been in the Denver area because of that's where our headquarters are. So we can give, students the opportunity to float between different departments if they're unsure of like what they like to do after they graduate. So we try to give them a wide array of experience. And I would say reach out to us. I think that's one of the things where even if we don't have an open position posted on our website, still feel free to make contact. Definitely, you can reach out to me and I can introduce you to whomever. I do a lot of the career outreach work to our youth as well, just to help generate like involvement and look for interns for us at the bank. We do have a native hiring preference here. So that's one thing where I think it's really important for us to keep that balance. We do have non-native employees who work for the bank, but really keeping that balance of like having people who are native and from the various communities across Indian country and just really representative of Indian country as a whole too, because we have employees who grew up in urban areas and work at the bank, and then like employees like myself who grew up on the res and relocated to the city, and like anywhere in between. We've had employees who were part of like non-recognized tribes who were trying to get recognition, and then like all the way through to our entire branch staff in Browning are all Blackfeet tribal members. So like 100% of that location is native run, which is really cool. So I would say like, yeah, reach out and just contact and don't I would encourage that a lot just because we're always looking for native talent. And it's so hard to find like people who work in business or have a business background because I kind of think that's not really culturally what students tend to lean to. So it's like finding needles in a haystack when you find like a native accountant.
Well, y'all heard her. They're hiring. You know where to go. All right, guys. I think that brings us to the end of this episode. Huge thank you to Veronica for joining us today. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Please visit our website, nativelearningcenter.com, to find more information on upcoming webinars and trainings. Feel free to contact our website with any episode ideas that y'all would be interested in us exploring. And be sure to come back for more content. Until then, this is Brooke and Awista, and we hope to connect with you guys again really soon.